Hi, everybody, and welcome back to a new edition of Confessions of a Celebrity Bodyguard. Has that song stuck in anybody's head yet? A lot of my friends are telling me every time I watch your podcast or listen to it, that Say Goodbye to Hollywood song is stuck in my head for a long time. That song is originally by Billy Joel. It's one of his first big hits, and that's me singing the little bridge part there, if you didn't know. One of my favorite artists of all time, of course. Just wrapped up an incredible long run at Madison Square Garden, more than anybody I think ever in the world. Pretty talented guy, and I'm pretty impressed with that run there at Madison Square Garden. Would have loved to have seen that. One of the things I wanted to call attention to today, real quick, some cool things happened this week. Number one, Celine Dion singing at the Olympics. So cool to see her back. As we all know, she's been fighting a disease. I forget the name of it, and I'd probably screw it up anyway. But so glad that she's back, because if you watched any of her documentaries on that disease, it's really, really sad and really hard to watch. The other cool thing that happened at the Olympics, of course, is that Snoop Dogg carried the torch. And if you're watching YouTube, there's a shot of him there. So this is kind of cool. Look at that thing, big old torch. And we got our Snoop Dogg there. Do you think other countries watch that and go, what is a Snoop Dogg? I think that thing looks like a big old blunt. I think it would have been funny if, like, he carried out a big old blunt and then lit the thing with it. I thought that would have been totally cool and kind of neat. Anyway, before we get started this week, we're on episode 7 of Confessions. I want to share something with you that's very cool. There's a bunch of cool houses in the Hollywood Hills, and they're all known for something. There was a round one that you could always see off of Sunset Boulevard, and that belonged to Merv Griffin for years. And of course, Merv Griffin, very wealthy man, started Wheel of Fortune and a lot of other things. And he used to have his own talk show back in the day when I was a kid. But anyway, he had a cool house up there. But one of the houses I wanted to share with you today, because and talk about, if you didn't know this, so Dick Clark, of course, from Dick Clark, American Bandstand, Dick Clark, those of you that are old enough to remember him. So Dick Clark would do the New Year's Eve ball drop every year in Times Square. He was involved in so many things. Dick Clark Productions did a bunch of stuff. He was one of my favorite people in the entertainment industry. And one of the things that I thought was the coolest thing he ever said, which was a quote by him about music, because Dick Clark was around the music industry, obviously, his whole career with Bandstand and everything. But one of his quotes was, "Music is the soundtrack to our lives." And that stuck with me forever, because all of us hear a song and it takes us right back to that place, right back to that time in your life. And you know exactly where you are. You could even smell the smells and feel the feels of those memories when you hear certain songs. So I thought that was a great quote by Dick Clark. I use it all the time. Music is the soundtrack to our lives, and it definitely is. But what Dick Clark did was he wanted to build a home up in the Malibu Hills for his wife, Carrie. It was a very unique home, and he had to fight the county and the city, I think, a little bit to finally get this done. But he did, in fact, get it done. And what it was a house that was almost a replica of the Flintstones house on the cartoon. Yabba dabba doo. Yeah, that's right. He built a Flintstone house for his wife. The home wasn't really, really big, but it was super cool looking. I mean, it definitely looked like a bedrock home. It was only a 1 bedroom, I think a 2 bath. Yeah, 1 bedroom, 2 bath home. And it just had unbelievable views. It was very unique. And it was one of the coolest things up there on the hill. I heard that they recently sold it because, of course, he's passed and so is his wife. But he built that home for her, and I thought that was kind of cool. I mean, if you have the money and you can build yourself a replica of a Flintstone home, how freaking cool is that, right? This place was really cool. It illuminated very beautifully at night up there on the hill, and I just thought that was something unique I'd share with you because Dick Clark being who he was, I don't know, I just kind of didn't expect him to be living in a Flintstone house, you know what I mean? So I thought I'd share that with you. It's like 2,500 square feet, 1 bedroom, 2 bath, all built with steel, wood, and concrete to kind of look like the crater rock look of bedrock and all that. But a lot of people don't know that. You can look it up if you're listening on Spotify or iHeartRadio. You can look it up and see pictures of this place. It's pretty freaking cool. One of the other things I wanted to mention to you guys I hadn't mentioned yet in my career down there in Hollywood, let me get a sip of this, was I got a call one day in between gigs, and it was this big executive protection company down on Wilshire Boulevard, and I don't think it was Gavin DeBecker. They're pretty big, but I don't think it was them. Another big executive protection company, and they called me in for an interview and said, we want to talk to you about a job. It's very high paying. There's a lot of perks involved, this and that. So I drive down to Wilshire and I go to this big skyscraper thing or whatever building down there and go up to, I don't know, the 8th floor or something. I meet with this guy and I sit down with him, and he said, we used to call these guys headhunters. So they know who's doing this kind of work, and they come after you if they have a need for something like that. So the guy says to me, I've got this job. It pays great, great perks, and it's for Larry Flint. And I said, Larry Flint, the Hustler magazine guy? And he says, yeah. So there he is right there, if you're watching YouTube. So everybody knows Larry Flint from Hustler magazine, owned Flint Publications down on Wilshire Boulevard, used to pass that building all the time. But the guy said to me, he says, this pays really big. You'll be his personal security guy. And if you're interested, this is how much it is. And there's a lot of perks involved with the job. So I thought, wow, that's a pretty big thing. I mean, Larry Flint, shit, I know he got money. So I was thinking about it and talking more with this guy and stuff. And he said, and this is the way it goes. If you're ever personal security for somebody high profile like that or big, you're at their beck and call. So you have no life, right? If he wants to go to Japan at 4 a.m, I have to get up out of my bed, pack my bags, and go to Japan with Larry Flint at 4 a.m. It's not really the kind of gig I wanted to do. I thought about it a little bit, and then I made my decision after the guy started to tell me there's some little things you need to know before you make your decision. He said, basically, you will have to help him to the restroom, and you will have to help him clean himself, and then put him back in the chair, and this and that. That kind of did it for me. I'm like, I don't think I want to wipe Larry Flint's butt. I know he's handicapped. I'm not saying anything about that. I'm just saying, ew, no, not doing it. So I just thought I'd share that little story with you. I think the guy was kind of disappointed I didn't take the job, but I'm sure somebody did. And I always thought that would have been interesting had I done it, though, right? The other thing I want to talk about real quick before we get moving on to the other stuff is when I first moved to Hollywood, I got this apartment in an apartment complex called Lanewood Pines. This apartment was about 2 blocks off of Hollywood Boulevard and a block off Sunset. So it was right there. I could walk to the Kodak Theater. The Walk of Fame was right there and everything. And it was just a super cool place. If you're watching YouTube, there's the outside of the building, Lanewood Pines. So I lived there when I first started in Hollywood. And this apartment complex being located centrally like that, right off the boulevard, A lot of people would come to that complex. The kids that were staying at hostels, people that were visiting Hollywood, really didn't have a lot of money. They would climb the fence to the pool at night, and they would go swimming. And so I would meet all kinds of different people at this apartment complex just because of where it is. There were many nights I let people come up to my apartment and sleep on the couch and stuff because they couldn't get into a hostel or they had nowhere to go, which in retrospect was probably fucking stupid, being weird old Hollywood and stuff. But I had a great time and met a lot of people and stuff. But I want to tell you this little story. So if you're watching YouTube, there's a shot of the pool area there, and I'm going to show you with my cursor. This was my apartment right here. It was on, I think, the third level, and it overlooked the pool. So it was interesting because I was down at the pool one day, and there was a lady and her husband, and I think their 15-year-old kid. I forgot his name. And they were down there, and they befriended me, and they seemed very nice. They were a Russian family. The child seemed like an only child. The kid seemed like he was probably very sheltered and all that stuff. But the interesting thing about it was I was talking to them, and they were saying how the kid loves movies, and they just moved here and whatever. And so I said, "Oh, that's cool." I said, I work for Chara Records up on Sunset Boulevard. I said, "I have quite a movie collection. If you guys ever want to borrow some movies, or he wants to borrow some movies to watch, you're more than welcome to borrow some." So they came over. The mother came over with the kid. He picked out a couple films, I don't know, a couple days later. And after I started letting the kid borrow my films, the mother would start bringing me a pot of different kinds of Russian food and stuff. I don't even know, to be honest with you, what kind of food it was. And it was kind of sad because I'd thank her and I'd close my door and I'd try and eat it and realize I don't like this. So, like, about three of those things went into the garbage disposal. And of course, I had to tell her, "Oh, it was delicious, thank you." But then she'd bring another one, and I'd be like, geez, how am I going to get out of this now? But anyway, long story short, this lady comes knocking on my door one day after I loaned the kids some more movies. And I open the door. I'm doing some work at home there in my desk. And she says, "My husband says to give you this shirt because we are thankful that you were so nice to me and my son." And I said, "Okay." And it's just a white, plain dress, button-up shirt like you'd wear with a tie. And I had a million of those because I had to wear a suit to work and stuff at one time. So I said, "Okay, thank you. I just want to be nice." They were giving me this shirt. It's just a simple shirt. I think I threw it in my closet. Well, listen to this. So, like, 3 days later, knock, 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 open the door. "My husband says you must pay for the shirt if you want to keep it." I felt like Jerry Seinfeld. I'm like, "No, here's the shirt. I never wanted the shirt. Take the shirt back." It was just crazy. It was like, okay, that's when I realized people are just freaking weird. So, yeah, I gave her the shirt back. But just a testament to the kind of weird things in Hollywood. You never know where people are from or what you're going to be, dealing with. So that story always cracked me up. Also, hey, listen, at that apartment, here's another even crazier story. So my father can attest to this because he came to visit me there a couple times. But at that same apartment complex, in the lower corner, down in the bottom, below my apartment, there lived a lady, and I don't remember her name. Her husband used to own a clothing line called Munsing Wear, and I guess he had passed away. She had a bunch of money, and she got an apartment there. But what was weird about this lady is sometimes late at night, like 1 or 2 in the morning, I'd come home, and she'd have her sliding door open to her bedroom, and you could clearly hear her watching porn. I mean, you could hear it. It was like, oh, yeah. And I know it wasn't her. It was definitely a porn movie. So here's this, like, 78-year-old woman watching porn every night. I know. What? It's funny, though, because my father came to visit me, and he was there one night, and guess what? He heard her. I know. I know. That's a true story. I used to have a neighbor that used to say, "True story." I guarantee you that's a true story. Hey, we're moving on. Guess what, you guys? We're moving into Jimmy Kimmel Live. So I spent a couple seasons there on Jimmy Kimmel Live, and I'll show you a cast picture on YouTube here. I believe I was there like 2005 to 2006, maybe into to 07. I don't remember. If you're watching YouTube, that's my little bald head way in the back there. But what I want to tell you about Jimmy Kimmel Live is like one of the most best jobs I ever had, one of the most fun jobs I ever had. One of the best things I ever did in my career. It really was. First of all, I was a huge late night fan. Jimmy Kimmel was a huge late night fan. That's why he wanted to do a late night show. Of course, Jimmy, Carson Daly, Ryan Seacrest, Rick Dees, all these guys came from radio and ended up in TV, which is not that unusual. Jimmy also coming from The Man Show with Adam Carolla. And at one time, what was his name? The guy that had the game show. Oh, Ben Stein's Money. Some of you may remember Jimmy from that. But Jimmy Kimmel Live late night show was, in my opinion, the coolest thing ever. I didn't know who Jimmy was that good. I wasn't that familiar with him when I got hired for that job, but I just knew it was a late night show, and being a fan of the Carson Show, the Tonight Show, and David Letterman, I definitely wanted to work on it. So I thought, how much fun could that be? Well, here's what I'm going to tell you. It was more fun than anything else I ever did in my whole career down there in Hollywood. So our theater for that show, of course, a lot of you already know, is right on Hollywood Boulevard across from the Kodak Theater. Very cool place. And it's in an old building, and I don't remember if it was an old Mason building or what. There's a story to Jimmy's building. But anyway, he does his late night show there. It's a couple levels inside there. I want to say 3. The green room and the dressing rooms and everything were in the basement. The middle floor was the main lobby and bar area. There was a bar up there. It was not a working bar, but we would do live performances of Huey Lewis and the News and people up in that lobby, as you've seen on the show. And of course, we did the back parking lot concerts. And if you're watching YouTube, you can check out the stage there. It was super cool when we did these things because the stages were really, really cool. They did such a great job with this. And some of the most fun I ever had was out there on that stage. We would have a lot of big bands. We had Destiny's Child one night. I mean, people came through there like crazy. And it's where I got to know Travis Barker from Blink-182 the most, because he came quite often to play with other bands and just to do his own thing. But that outdoor concert series, and it was usually sponsored by Budweiser or somebody, was some of the most fun summer nights I've ever had in my life out there. So Jimmy Kimmel, of course, has a lot of his family working at the show. And it was interesting because I think it was the first week I was there, they were having a meeting in the lobby, and we were talking about shutting down Hollywood Boulevard to do this big ass concert because Jay-Z was coming back with a new album. And they wanted to shut the boulevard down, put a stage out front on Hollywood Boulevard in front of the Kodak and the Jimmy Kimmel Studio and the El Capitan Theater, and have this big ass concert for one of the Kimmel shows, which was going to promote ratings and all that good stuff. So they did this thing, and I got to tell you, it was pretty damn big. They shut down Hollywood Boulevard. We had LAPD handling all the crowd with us, and then we were going to bring in Jay-Z and do this thing. So it was kind of cool because there's like hundreds of people out there. He brought Beyonce with him. She just kind of stood on the side of the stage and had a big hoodie over her head because obviously, people go crazy over her. So I think she just didn't want to be bothered. But this was like the coolest thing in the world. We had the street shut down, this huge stage with lights, and he came out, and I think he did 4 or 5 songs out there. But it was one of the coolest things we'd ever done, was shutting down that boulevard and doing that outdoor concert. So that was kind of my initiation to Jimmy Kimmel Live, like I want to say my first week. If you're watching YouTube, there's a placard from from that day, Jay-Z on Hollywood Boulevard. What did it say there? 2006, November. Yeah, so that was a really good time, and what a blast doing that. So I remember after that night, I thought, well, this is going to be the most fun job I've ever had, and it really was. I have so many stories I'm going to be sharing with you. It's probably going to take at least 2 more episodes before we get into my end of my journal and my career down there in Hollywood, which was with CSI Miami. But anyway, Jimmy Kimmel, so much fun every night. Such a cool show. One of the things that I always dug about that show was we'd go in the afternoon. Jimmy would usually be in the studio rehearsing with his writers and the producers and things, and they would be talking about what they're going to do on the show that night. What was fun for me was going home at night and actually watching it broadcast and realizing what was going on the whole time behind the scenes. And that was always kind of fun for me because I'd be thinking in my head, oh, I know when that is. That's when I had to do this, or that's when this happened. But one of the things that was so exciting for me, and it never went away, was right before they go live to tape the show. You get your studio audience in there, excuse me, and they count it down. And it was usually the stage manager, and he'd count it down. And of course, that theme music would play, Cleto and the Cletones, and it'd be like 5, 4, 3, 2, we're up. From Hollywood, it's Jimmy Kimmel Live! Dun, 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 dun. Tonight, Jimmy welcomes, and every freaking night that we did that show, that was my favorite part because it was just so exhilarating. We were going live, we were coming up, and when you're standing right there in the studio with a whole studio audience, and you know you got a good show coming on, and that opening was just super, super cool. In fact, I would have loved to have done that job. But yeah, that was one of my favorite things. Thought I'd share that with you. Part of my crew there involved about 26 security personnel. If you're watching YouTube right now, you're going to see a picture of me there in the middle. I've got my buddy Gerard Devers there next to me, Matt Slayman, the other tall kid there. And then, of course, all of you people know Guillermo Rodriguez. That's Guillermo. What you don't know probably is that Guillermo was actually my employee. So Guillermo was already working at the show before I got there. He was a security officer. And what he did was he worked the back gate. So the back gate is where the parking lot is for Jimmy and all the people on the show, including myself, to park in. And that's also where that outdoor stage was. So Guillermo worked that little guard shack there. And for some reason, Jimmy took a liking to the little guy because of the way he talked. You know, how you doing today? Oh, I'm good, Jimmy. Yes, Jimmy. So he fell in love with this little guy. And as you all know, he is now part of the show and has been. And Jimmy has always taken very good care of Guillermo. He's been in a million skits. And he's just a funny, funny little guy. I have a lot of stories about me and Guillermo I'll share with you as we go forward. But I just thought I'd share that with you. He was actually part of the security crew. And another interesting thing is when you're on these shows, you don't realize there's other people that work there. I mean, you know other people work there, but there's other people that you may know who are working there that aren't doing things they used to do and that you were used to seeing them do. For instance, if you all remember Bobcat Goldthwait. So Bobcat was in all the Police Academy movies. If you're watching YouTube, there's a shot of him in the movie there. Hilarious comedian, writer, super talented guy. So Bobby was our director of Jimmy Kimmel Live when I was there. There were a couple of them that came through, but Bob was there with us for quite a while. There's a shot of him currently today. And what I want to tell you about that man is you couldn't meet a nicer man in the world than Bobcat. He was very kind to my brother when my brother was visiting the show. When we were done shooting, I think he was even out back smoking a joint with my brother in the parking lot and just chatting him up. But I enjoyed working with Bob. I really miss that guy. I met his daughter, a very sweet girl. But there's just nothing bad I can say about Bobcat. And I was kind of shocked. I'm like, wait, he's our director? I remember him, all those Police Academy movies. So it's always interesting. Like I said, you don't realize that a lot of these people work there. Um, the other person I'm going to spend a little bit of time on here is Jimmy Kimmel's Uncle Frank. Some of you may or may not remember him. I don't know why you wouldn't if you've been a fan of the Kimmel Late Night Show. Uncle Frank was the security guy that stood by the door with Guillermo. He was also in a lot of skits. So Uncle Frank used to be a New York City police officer for, I think, 26 years. He used to correct me all the time. He was the sweetest man in the world. He was so cool, and he was loved by everybody. And Uncle Frank would sit outside before the show and in a chair in the sun, just out by the parking lot all the time. He would not get a car service to work. I mean, Jimmy would have gotten him a car. He liked to travel on the little LA subway from North Hollywood into Hollywood and come to work that way. And a lot of times he was famous for meeting people on the subway train and inviting them to the show that night and putting them on the guest list. Sometimes when he wasn't supposed to, but he was Uncle Frank. But what a sweet man he was. He's definitely one of my most favorite people I ever met from Jimmy's family. Jimmy Kimmel has a whole bunch of family that works there at the show. And I got to know each and every one of them, his father, his mother, his cousin Mickey, cousin Sal. I mean, everybody. And what I want to tell you is all really stellar people. They treated all of us just like family, including Aunt Chippy. And if you watch the show, then you'll probably know who Jimmy's Aunt Chippy is. If you're watching YouTube, I'll throw a picture of her up. There she is right there. That's all Aunt Chippy. She is hilarious. And she would come in to the green room, and I'd get her in there, and she'd put on a really fancy dress and come out and get ready to be interviewed by Jimmy and stuff. And she was just a hoot, man. I mean, that lady, she could take on anybody, but she loved me. She loved everybody at the show. And his whole family was that way. They were just a nice bunch of people. I mean, Jimmy Kimmel's family is legit the coolest fucking family I ever met in Hollywood. So I always enjoyed that. Of course, Aunt Chippy, if you don't know the story, she was married to Uncle Frank, and there he is with her, if you're watching YouTube, stomping grapes like Ethel and Lucy out by the outdoor stage. But the interesting thing was, you know, Uncle Frank actually did security for Frank Sinatra years ago as well. And like I said, Frank was such a nice man. Every day he'd see me, Chuck, how you doing? Touch my face. You're beautiful. I love you. I'll see you at showtime. It was great. Such a great old guy. My father and some of my family used to come visit, and they would hang out in the green room with some of these people, and they all knew Uncle Frank. Uncle Frank would all, your father here yet? Where's your father? I'm going to go say hi to your father. Where's your mother? I love your mother. She's beautiful. You're beautiful. You're all beautiful. Fucking love Uncle Frank. I can never say enough about him. And here's the other thing. I will never forget the guy. He's amazing. So him and Aunt Chippy were married for years and then, of course, divorced, but they were still friends and they got along great. They did a lot of skits together. And like I said, just the whole family was just bomb, dude. Just really great people. So I also want to let you know, I was talking about how exciting it is at the beginning of the show when we'd start taping and they'd say, from Hollywood. So the announcer that does that is this guy right here, if you're watching YouTube. That's Dickie Barrett. You might remember Dickie Barrett from the Mighty Mighty Boss Tones. He's the lead singer. Dickie was our voice of Jimmy Kimmel Live there. And he was funny. I'd come in on the afternoon sometimes, and he would be like practicing saying the name. Sometimes I think they did a voiceover for that part when the show starts. So in case he screwed it up, they could fix it or whatever. But some of the names of the guests, if it was someone unusual with an unusual name, I'd hear him in there going, fuck, how do I even say this fucking name? I'm going to screw it up. But Dickie was a legit guy. Loved that guy a lot. He'd hang out in the green room after he did his little thing all the time, of course. You know, Dickie's a very good friend of Jimmy's. Jimmy Kimmel's the most loyal friend you can have. If he's your friend, you're his friend for always. He took care of his friends. once he got Guillermo put on the show as part of the show, he took care of Guillermo and his wife Sarah and their little children. I mean, he just made sure that they didn't need anything as far as health insurance and things like that. So, super legit guy, definitely a loyal friend. If you've never seen me outside of the Jimmy Kimmel studio, I'll throw it up there for you, right there on Hollywood Boulevard, across from the Kodak Theater. And of course, there's a big crowd out there because that's where the audience lines up for the day. And then again, that outside shot for you if you're looking at YouTube. And right next door, of course, was the what do you call it, El Capitan Theater, which was owned by Disney. So it's interesting the stuff that went on there. There were a lot of premieres there for Disney films. We did a lot of things over there next door and worked with them on a couple different things. But it's definitely a pretty cool place to wander around. When you're on a late night set, you can kind of walk around the stage and stuff. And it was great having a studio audience too and getting that vibe of the people and stuff. Very exciting every night because you always had a new guest and you didn't know who was coming on and all that kind of stuff. So I always felt like that was kind of exciting for me. There's a little thing they do. It's a one sheet, they call it. You get it at the beginning of the show. And it basically just says, that this person's coming on first. This is the second interview. This is the third interview. And it let me know when I had to leave and go get somebody from the dressing room in the green room, which I'm going to show you a little bit of that next week. Because that green room at Jimmy Kimmel Live was like legit where everybody wanted to be in Hollywood. I mean, people wanted to get into that green room because it had a bar, it had anything you could need in there. It had a pool table, monitors to watch the show. And that's where a lot of stuff happened that I'm going to talk about in the next couple of episodes. So we're deep into it now. Jimmy Kimmel Live. I want to say thank you to Spotify this week. And we're going to continue on next week with more stories from Jimmy Kimmel and his family and the celebrities and different things that happened while I worked there. It's great stuff. It really is. Please tune in for it. And just know there's a lot more coming. I hope everybody has a great week. I'm off to Half Moon Bay to celebrate my 16-year anniversary, but we will talk soon. Have a great week, everybody.